guys, it's Anna. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a tutorial for this crochet cardigan, which has buttons, which I've been so obsessed with. I recently learned how to properly attach buttons, so I've just been doing so much of it, and I think it just makes it look so much more professional. I've also started blocking my work, which has helped so much with the drape, so highly recommend. But I think this is the perfect fall into winter kind of transition piece. I live in Southern California and it really does not get very cold at all here, so not quite as applicable for me, but it's been a little bit chilly and this is perfect. And you can adjust with whatever type of yarn you want to use. If you want it to be lighter and not as warm, you could use a cotton, or if you want something really warm and cozy, you could use a wool. So I think there's so much that you can do. I think this would be so pretty in a mohair, especially if you brushed it. Someone do that, please. But it's very, very simple. It's done top down. There's no sewing, nothing like that. It's just a bunch of double crochets basically, and then some single crochets for the button band. But you could also totally just do ties if you didn't want to do buttons. The world is your oyster. But without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. All right, getting into the materials you'll need. Of course, you'll need some yarn. I'm using this huge Lion brand Pound of Love yarn. This is a medium weight acrylic yarn, and it recommends a 6mm hook, but I am going to be using a little bit smaller of a hook. And this is in the color denim. And here is the yarn information if you're curious and trying to find a similar one. And then I'm going to be using a 4mm hook because I just feel like that is going to work the best with this thickness of yarn. But this pattern is made to measure and totally customizable. So if you want to use a thicker or thinner yarn, just adjust your hook size accordingly, and you'll be doing this based off your measurements anyway, so that is totally fine. But this is the combo that I'm using. You'll also need some scissors, some sort of stitch marker. I'm using safety pins. You can use literally anything, bobby pins, anything will work. You'll need a darning needle to weave in your ends. And then lastly, and also optionally, some buttons. You don't have to put buttons on at the end, but I am going to show you how to do that. If you'd rather, you could just crochet some ties and then have it be a tie front. But I think the buttons just look so professional and polished. So I am going to show you how to add buttons at the end. I haven't decided which ones I want to do. I think probably this one. I feel like that's cuter with this. I don't know, but I have 5 of these, and that is everything. Sorry about my pinky, just ignore her. To start off, you'll just make a slip knot. So just make a loop with your yarn like that, and then go through the loop and pick up this piece of yarn and pull through. And then you're going to insert your hook into there and then tighten it down to your hook. And we're going to be making the yoke of the sweater now, and it's going to be worked top down raglan style. So right now we're going to be chaining a number that is going to be the smallest part of the cardigan. So the very top collar part, that's what this is going to be. And the only thing to make sure here is that this is an even number, and this is totally customizable depending on how wide you want your neck opening to be. Obviously the larger chain you make here, the wider it'll be and the lower it'll sit. So if you want more of a high neck, smaller opening, then you would do fewer, and then obviously vice versa. So I'm going to do mine roughly in the 110 to 116 chain range. I think I'll just see kind of how it fits and how I like that. But I'm going to do that now. So you're going to just chain that number. Again, the only thing to keep in mind right now is that it needs to be an even number. So just wrap your yarn around the hook and then pull up a loop. And you want to do this nice and loosely. So that's 1. Do it again, that's 2. And keep it really loose so it doesn't, bunch up a ton once you crochet into it. So you're just gonna chain that even number, and then I'll get back to you once I have mine and I'll give you the measurements and stuff. I finished my chains and I ended up doing 100 chains and was kind of happy with that. And for me, that's roughly 24 to 24.5 inches long. So I did 100 chains, but again, this is totally customizable. You can kind of look at my end product and see how that fits on me and adjust yours accordingly. And you can also just hold it up to yourself. Again, this is the collar topmost part of the cardigan. So you can kind of hold them together as if they were buttoned together and just see how high that sits on your body. But find that number, again, just make sure it's even, and make sure you write down that chain number and have double checked that that is the exact number of chains you have, because we are going to be doing some math. So now I'm going to get into the math portion, which I promise is not difficult. So with this being a raglan sweater, we essentially are going to be making 4 corners, and this is where we're going to do our increases for the yoke upper portion of the sweater. And we're gonna have to do a little bit of math to figure out how many stitches each side needs to be. So this is my little diagram of what we have going on here. This is the start of the chain and this is the end of the chain right there. And so first you're gonna want to note that initial chain number that you made. So again, mine was 100. So this side of the rectangle is gonna be 0.3 times our chain. So I'll write that down, 0.3 times chain. And then obviously so will this other side, those are the same length. And then that means that each of these sides will be 0.2 times the chain. So that gives us this little diagram, and now we can do kind of our math here. So get a handy dandy calculator out if you need it. My numbers are gonna be really easy because I just have a chain of 100, but you probably will need one if you're using any other chain length. So 0.3 times 100 is 30. So that's what this side is gonna be, and same thing over here. And then 0.2 times 100 is 20. So each of these sides are gonna be 20 stitches long. And to verify that all your math is correct, all of these should add up to your initial chain number. So 30 plus 30 is 60, plus 40 is 100. So everything adds up. And I will say these are very easy, simple numbers, and it's totally possible that you won't end up with round numbers like this. So if you did 0.3 times your chain, and let's say you ended up with like 31.3, then you would round that number down to 31. So just normal rounding rules. If it's below 0.5, you round down. If it's above 0.5, you round up. And let's say for this side, you got 22.8, you would round that up to 23. So just round your numbers to get whatever number makes sense. And again, just verify that once you have those numbers that it all adds up to your chain number, and then you'll be good. So after each one of these sides is where we're going to be making our increases. But there is one little caveat, is that this isn't, a full side here. We do have that break here, and that's representing like the start of this chain. So for this initial part here, we're just gonna be doing half of this side. So we're only doing, this part, and then we'll do this 20, and then we'll do this 30, and then this 20, and then the other half of the 30. So whatever number you end up for this long side, you'll want to split that in two. And again, if you get a number that doesn't divide into two evenly, you can just have each side be one different from the other. So for example, let's say that this side for you was 35 wide. That obviously is not divisible by 2, and that would give you 17.5. So in that case, you would do 17 on one side and 18 on the other side. So if you have a 0.5, just do the lower of that number and then round up for the other side, and that's what you'll do. So hopefully that makes sense to you, but that's really all it is. It's not super, super difficult. So go back to your chain, and now we're going to be doing the half number of that long side. So again, mine was 30 wide, so I'm doing half of that, which is 15. Again, if you have an odd number, then you'll just do, it'll be off by 1 on either side, but it won't be noticeable. So just pick one of those widths in that case. But again, mine divides evenly into 15 and 15. So I'm going to be doing 15 stitches right now, and we're going to be making double crochets. So chain 2 to act as your turning chain. So we've done 2 additional chains beyond our regular full length of chain. And now we're going to be making a double crochet into the 3rd chain from your hook. So skip those 2 we just made, wrap your yarn around your hook, and go into that 3rd chain from the hook, the 3rd V. So right here, go into there, and then pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. You'll yarn over, pull through the first 2, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2. So that's our first double crochet, and we are not going to be counting these turning chains as double crochets. And like I said, I'm going to go for 15 now. So go for whatever the half number is for you of your longer side, and I will get back to you once I've done that. So I'm going to do my second one now, going into that next chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's my second double crochet, yarn over, go into this next chain there, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's 3 double crochets, and again, I'm going for 15. So I'll get back to you once I have that. So I just made my 15th double crochet, and now it's time to make a corner where we're going to be placing our increases. So how we're going to do that for this row is we're going to chain 1 like that. And then in this very next stitch, you're not skipping any stitches here, you are going to make your next double crochet. So don't skip a stitch, just go into that very next stitch after chaining 1, with a double crochet. And as you can see, that just makes a little gap there, and that's where we're going to be placing our increase on the next row. So it kind of just marks that corner for us. And now we're going to continue with our short side. So just to recap, we just did half of this 30 here, and now we're going to be doing this 0.2 times the chain. So again, for me, that is 20. Do whatever that is for you now. And this double crochet we just made there is going to count as the first one of that side. So I have 19 left for a total of 20 for my chain number that I did. So that's 1, and then I will go up to a total of 20, and I'll get back to you once I've done that. Just making 1 double crochet into every single chain. All right, I just made my 20th double crochet, and now we're going to do the same thing here where we make another corner. So just like the other time, you're going to chain 1, and then you're not going to skip any stitches, but you're going to go into the very next stitch to start our next side. And for this one, this is going to be our long side again, except this time we're doing the full long side instead of just half. So I'm going to do my full 30 instead of just 15. So that was number 1 of 30, and I'm going to do 29 more. I just did my 30, my second long side, the first time doing the full long side, and you know the drill, it's time to make another corner. So chain 1, don't skip any stitches, but go right into that next one with just a double crochet. And then this is going to start the second and final short side. So I'm going to do my 20, and then I'll come back to you after doing that short side, but just do whatever your shorter side is. I just did my 20th stitch, and now we're going to make our final corner. So chain 1, go into that very next stitch with a double crochet, and if you counted everything correctly and you had the correct number of stitches, then the total number of stitches you make here and all of the stitches you have remaining to make should be the half of your longer side. So again, for me, that is 15, and I have 15 stitches remaining, including this one that I just made. So gonna just make those final 15 and then get back to you. And by the way, if you want to go ahead and add a stitch marker to each of these corners just so that you can see where you need to make the increases, that's what those are for. It's kind of optional though, because you can also just kind of tell, but it's helpful for at least the first row or so, just so you don't accidentally skip any. But I just made it to the end of my entire row with my last half of that long side, so 15 for me. And now I'm going to chain 2 and turn. And like I said, those chains are not counting as a stitch. So we're going to make a double crochet into that very first stitch right there. And we're going to make 1 double crochet into every single stitch until we get to our first corner. So I'm going to be making 15 double crochets, but whatever that half number is for you, just 1 in every single stitch until we get into the corner. And that's where we're going to make our first increase. Okay, I made it up to right before that hole. So I'm going to go into the stitch right before the hole, just like normal. And then to make our increase, the way we're going to do this is you're going to make a double crochet directly into that corner gap. So right into that hole, I'm going to make a double crochet, and then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to make another double crochet in that same gap. Just like that. So to summarize, I did a double crochet in the stitch right before the gap, and then I did a double crochet, a chain 1, and then another double crochet into the actual gap itself. And then my next stitch is going to be in the double crochet right after the gap, right there. And then I'm just going to keep doing 1 double crochet into every single stitch until I make it to my next corner slash gap. I'm at the next corner slash gap, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I worked my stitch into the stitch directly before the gap, and then to make the increase, I'll go into the opening itself, make a double crochet, chain 1, and then make another one in that same opening. And then our next one is going to be in the stitch right after, and we're just going to continue following this pattern of doing a double crochet in every other double crochet, and then when you get to the corners, you do 1 in the stitch right before, 1 in the actual opening, then a chain 1, and then another in the actual opening, and then 1 in the stitch right after. And then just do that until the very end. I made it to the end here, and I'm going to make my last double crochet into that last stitch there. And then we're going to chain 2 just like normal at the end of every row and turn our work. And at this point you can kind of start to see the rectangle shape forming, but by now you have the row repeat that we're going to be doing for the rest of this top portion all the way until you get to about your armpits. So basically, to recap, you're doing a double crochet in every single stitch, and then when you get to these little corner gaps, you're going to do double crochet in the stitch right before, double crochet in the gap, chain 1, and then another double crochet in the gap, and then double crochet in the stitch right after the gap. And you just do that all the way down the row, and you're going to continue this until, like I said, you have enough for, you know, once you fold it over and actually put it on as if it's a sweater. And again, I'll show you this and kind of like what I'm talking about once I get there, but you want that to reach to about your armpit area so that you could connect it and then start working on the sleeves. So I'm just going to keep doing this off camera. Just keep following that pattern until you have a length that works for you. Again, that's going to be totally dependent on your size, the yarn you're using, how big you made your neckline, etc. So totally going to be personalized to you, but I'll let you know what I end up doing. This was our second row, and I'll show you how many rows I end up doing, but just keep following that pattern. Don't have to do anything crazy, but I'll get back once I've done that. All right, so I wanted to show you guys what I ended up doing. So I did 16 rows from the very first double crochet row we did to where I am now. So 16 rows of double crochets is what I ended up doing. And just kind of wanted to show you what that looks like on me so you can gauge what you want to do for yours. So if I grab each corner from the front and the back, you can see that they meet in the front. And so that is a little bit even longer than maybe you want to do. It doesn't have to meet, but basically you want it to be just right under the armpit. So I really could have done a couple rows shorter, but I wanted mine to be a little bit more oversized. So mine actually, if I bring the 2 corners together, does actually meet and touch there. But in case you don't want to do that and you want to end it just a little bit before, we will be making like a bridge where you can add in some extra chains there. So let's say that like it didn't fully reach and it just only went to like right there. You would make a chain, which is the next step, and that is going to be the bridge there, and then we'll make the sleeves of the sweater in the round like that. So totally up to you if you want to make yours a little bit bigger than mine and go like under your armpit like this, or if you just want to kind of stop it maybe a couple rows before and then make a bridge. But basically you need it at least to be like right at your armpits when you try it on. So I just wanted to show you again, this was 16 rows for me, but if you do have a gap under your armpit there, then you'll want to kind of measure that out and determine how many chains width that would be. And then that's what our gap is going to be for you. So just wanted to show it on me so you could kind of have a reference for that. But yeah, I did 16 and mine does kind of connect under the armpits there. Like I said, I finished up my 16th row, and once you're happy with that length, then you're actually going to start the next row, but you're not going to go all the way around. So I started my 17th row just like normal, and then I just went up to the corner, and I'll show you what to do once we get there. So I made it to this very first corner where we would normally do our increases right in that space, and we're not going to be doing any increases. We're going to start kind of that bridge. So you're just going to go 1 double crochet into the actual opening, just like normal, but that's all we're going to be putting in that opening. And now we are going to be making the bridge. So if you look and kind of fold everything over, then you can see we are going to be connecting to this other corner in the back, and then this is going to be our arm opening. So if you are going to be making that bridge, this is where you would do that. So you would chain, let's say you needed to chain like 6, you would chain those chains there, and then we'd reattach on the other side, but I'm not going to be doing a bridge because mine connects already and I don't need to. So what I'm going to do is no bridge, but this is where you would do those chains right now. So make those chains if you need them, but if not, you can continue with me. And once you have all that, we are going to connect into this other side over here. So to do that, you're going to slip stitch into that gap on the other side. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then pull through the loop on your hook. And now they're connected, and you're going to chain 2. And at this point, I'd recommend just taking everything out and trying this on now that it's connected, so you can actually put your arm through this and see how it feels. And since we're not doing any increases or decreases on the sleeves, you can also put your hand in it and see like how wide of an opening it is on your arm. So obviously this is going to be like a wide sleeve for me, which I like. So if you're good with all that, then we're good to continue, but just wanted to make sure that, you know, it's not too tight on your armpits. It's not like way too big, etc. And if it is, then adjust that down, but make sure you note how wide your chain gap is or your bridge, so that you can replicate it on the other side. And if you're good with that, then we are going to start working in the round around this arm opening to make our sleeve. So now that we've made our chain 2, we're like working on the back piece right now. This is the front short piece, and we're in that gap here. Those chains are not going to count as a double crochet, so we're going to make a double crochet into that gap that we just slip stitch into. So make your double crochet, and now we're going to be working in the round for the sleeve and just doing 1 double crochet into every single stitch. So super simple. Once you get to the bridge / join on the other side, it'll be a little different. So I'll show you what we do there. But for right now, you're just doing 1 double crochet into every single stitch. I made it back around to where we started, and this is where things get a little bit odd because we're actually going to be working into the side of these stitches. So it's a little bit unclear where you should go next. So I worked into this final double crochet there, and then I'm going to do 1 double crochet into that next gap right there. And then into the side of this final row here, I'm going to do 2 double crochets because that's like kind of the width of a double crochet is going to be about 2 stitches. So I'll do 1 double crochet into the side. You can go anywhere. There's no real stitch to go into, so I'm just kind of going into the hole right there. And then in this final last part, I'm going to do my 2nd double crochet. And then if you have a bridge here that you chained, this is where you would go into that bridge. Let's say you chained 6, then you would be doing 6 double crochets, 1 in each chain. I don't have any, so I am now done, and I'm going to connect to this initial double crochet that we made, not the chains, but the double crochet, because the chains are not counting as a stitch for us. So pull up a loop and then pull through all of the loops to make a slip stitch. And then you're gonna chain 2 and turn. And now we're just gonna be doing double crochets in the round. It's really important that you're not accidentally increasing. So I'm gonna show you really closely which hole we're going into. So I'm going to show you exactly where you need to go in so you can avoid making any accidental increases. So these chains are not counting as a stitch, and so our first double crochet is going to be in this hole right here, directly to the left of those 2 chains. So I'm going to make a double crochet directly into here. So make your first double crochet there. And now we're going to be making a double crochet in every remaining stitch. So this is our next one. And this isn't going to be weird at all because we're not going into like the sides of any stitches or anything. So literally just 1 double crochet into every remaining stitch. And then I'll show you once we get to the end where you want to stop. So I'm at the end here and I'm going to show you where to stop. So if you look, you can see that these chains here are kind of in this stitch right here, and this is where we made our first double crochet. There's an opening here. You are not going to go into that opening. You're not going in this opening. This one is going to be your last stitch. So I'm going to make my last stitch there, and I'll show you again what I'm talking about. That was my last stitch. Don't go into this stitch because that is where these chains were on top of. You don't want to go there because if you go into there, you'll be making an increase. So we just made our final stitch, and if it helps, you can always just count all of your stitches as you go through your rows to make sure you're not increasing. But yeah, make sure you're not increasing by going there. And then you are going to make a slip stitch into the top of this double crochet, the first double crochet we made. So just go into there, get both of those top V's on your hook like that. Pull up a loop and pull through the loop on your hook to slip stitch, and then you're going to chain 2 and you're going to turn your work so you're working the other way. This joining method and making sure you're turning and going into the stitches that I tell you is what's going to give you a really kind of invisible straight seam. So to start off this one, we are going to make a double crochet right into that tiny hole there, So start there, make a double crochet, and then we're going to do one in all of the other double crochets. And this is our pattern for the rest of this sleeve. So I'll show you one more time when I get to the end of this one, just so you can see how I end it again in case you need to. But you're just doing one double crochet in every single stitch, and then you're gonna do this until you have a sleeve length. I'm at the end, and our final double crochet is gonna be this stitch right here. So we're not gonna go into this opening there. We are done. And then we're gonna insert our hook into the top of that first double crochet we made, slip stitch, and then chain 2 and turn. And that is gonna be our repeat for the remaining rows. We're just doing one double crochet in every stitch, and just make sure you're starting and ending like I showed you. And you're just gonna do that until you have a full sleeve length. So I'll come back to you once I've done that, and I'll let you know how many rows I ended up doing. I am back with a finished sleeve. So this is the length that I did from here where we connected at the armpit all the way down to here. And I ended up doing 38 rows, which for me comes out roughly to about 18.5 inches long. But you just want to try it on and see how long it is on you and how long you want it to be. I will say this is acrylic yarn, and I'm going to be seam blocking it, so it is going to stretch a bit. So I kind of factored that in, but the best bet for you is just going to be trying it on, seeing how it fits. If you're planning on blocking it, you can factor that in as well. But that's how long mine ended up being and how many rows I did. To end your sleeve off, you're gonna do your slip stitch just like normal, and then instead of chaining 2 like we would normally do, you're just gonna chain 1 and then cut your yarn and then just pull through and tighten that down so it's secure. And then we will weave that in later. And now we get to do the same thing on the other side for our other sleeve. So just fold in this other side the same way as this one. And this time you are going to attach your yarn right here on this side. So we're kind of inverting what we did on the other side, where we did just that first part here and then we connected the armpit and started working the round. We're gonna do the first part starting here, go to the armpit, connect here, and then start working in the round there. So grab this piece and you're gonna insert your hook into that very top of that double crochet there, just like so, getting those loops on your hook. Then grab your yarn, and I like to leave a nice long tail for when I weave it in later, and just put that on your hook, and you're gonna pull it through like that, and then I'm gonna chain 2. And now we are going to double crochet in every stitch until we get to that first gap there, just like we did on this side, just inverted. And your first double crochet is going to be in that very first double crochet, the one that we just attached our yarn into. So make a double crochet in that very first double crochet there. That's going to count as our first double crochet. And then we're going to do one in every remaining stitch until that gap there. I'm right before our gap right here. So just like the other time, I'm gonna make a double crochet into the gap itself, like so. And then we are gonna be connecting to the other side. So at this point, I'm gonna fold it down so that we can, make sure nothing's twisted here, and that when you lay it down, it's all flat and going along with the way that this other side is laying. And at this point, this is where you would do a bridge with those chains. If you did that on the other side, you just basically want to recreate exactly what you did on the other side for the other sleeve. So if you made a chain here, do the same number of chains. I, as you probably know, did not do anything, so I'm not going to do any chains there. I'm just going to go into this other gap here, insert my hook into the gap, and then pull my yarn through all of the loops to make a slip stitch. Then I'm going to chain 2, and now we are going to be doing exactly what we did where we are working double crochets in the round here. So I'm not going to do it again because it's the exact same thing, so feel free to just go back in the video and watch that if you need to. But we're going to be making a double crochet right here, and then one in every remaining stitch. And then again, I show you how to end it off on this first row, since it's a little weird and we're working into the sides of stitches, but you're doing the exact same thing that we did on the other side. So really what you want to do now is just make sure you're doing the same exact number of stitches in the round as you did over here, so you haven't added any and it's not wider or more narrow than the other sleeve. And then you also want to do the exact same number of rows so that your sleeves are the same length, obviously. And then once you've done that sleeve the exact same way as this one, then we'll work on the rest of the cardigan. So I will come back once I finish this second sleeve and show you what to do next. Okay, I just finished up my 38th row on my other sleeve. So it's exactly the same as this first sleeve we made, same length, same width around. And now it's time to work on the body. After you connect and slip stitch into that first double crochet there, you're gonna chain one and cut your yarn, leaving a tail that you can weave in later, and then pull through and then just tighten that down. So how we're gonna do this is just attach our yarn on one of these sides here, and then we're just gonna be working this way. So like back and forth, going down and just doing rows just around here for the body part of the sweater. So I'm gonna attach my yarn to this side that has the tail because later when I'm weaving in my ends, I want to like be able to tie these together to secure them rather than having to have like a random end over here. But you can do literally whatever you want. It truly doesn't matter. So grab your yarn and you are gonna insert your hook into the top of that last double crochet there. So right here in the top of this double crochet, you're gonna insert your hook right into the top there. So you have these two loops on your hook, and then you're gonna grab your yarn, leave a little tail there, and then just put that on your hook and pull that through. And then you are going to chain two, and now make a double crochet into that same exact stitch, just like we've always done when we're attaching our yarn. So go into that stitch right there that we just attached our yarn to. And then that's gonna be our first double crochet. And now we're just gonna be working double crochets, one in every single stitch all the way around. And I'll show you what to do when you get to the like armpit portion, because there is one little weird spot for this first row, but it's very self-explanatory. So just for right now, one double crochet into every single other double crochet all the way until the other side. And then I'm approaching that little armpit area I was talking about. So I have just two more stitches left of this front panel. So I'm just gonna go into those, and then I'm now at that armpit, and you can see it's kind of like, it's weird. It's where the back part connects here and we made the bridge and stuff. So what I'm gonna do, as you can see, this is the first stitch of the back panel, and then this is the last stitch of the front panel. I'm just gonna go into this stitch right here that's like kind of crooked and honestly hard to see, but just go anywhere in that armpit space and you'll be fine. I'm just gonna go right there with a double crochet, just one, and then my next stitch will be starting that back panel. So it really doesn't matter. Just do the same thing that you do on this side, on the other side, like normal, so you can make sure nothing's uneven. And then at this point, again, we're just doing one double crochet in every single stitch all the way until the other side. And then when you get to the other armpit, you'll do the exact same thing that we just did here on that side. And then I'll show you at the end. I'm finishing up this first row. I started here obviously, and then went all the way around across that armpit, all the way through the back, across this armpit, and then now I'm here. So I'm gonna end off this row by just going into that very last double crochet with a double crochet, and then chain two and turn. And that is going to be our row repeat now. So you can determine how long you want this to be. If you want it, you could leave it even like this, just as a little shrug. I think that'd be cute with just a couple buttons. Love that. Or you can make it cropped, or you can make it full length. Totally up to you at this point. And you're just gonna keep doing that, going back and forth like this. And you won't have to worry about the armpit or anything, because you already like covered that with these double crochets. So you're just going into double crochets. Very simple, no increases, no decreases, nothing, just until you have the length you want. So I will come back once I'm happy with my length. I haven't decided how long I want to make this one, so I'm just gonna do whatever I end up wanting, and then I'll show you what that ends up being and how long and stuff. But yeah, super, super simple. I will be back once I'm at a length that I'm happy with. All right, I went ahead and finished up the length of the sweater, and I ended up doing 23 rows, which I can measure for you. Came out to be roughly 11 inches under the armpit, and I am going to be blocking it, so I kept that in mind as well, that it might grow a little bit after that. So after you finish up that final row there, you are going to chain one. And we're not going to be cutting our yarn yet because we are going to be making our button band and attaching our buttons. So at this point, if you don't want to do buttons, then you could just detach your yarn and then crochet like some single crochet strings and then attach them here, and then you would just tie the strings together to close the top. But I am going to be showing you how to do buttons. So if you have those, then grab those. And once you have done your chain one, we are going to be single crocheting rows up and down the inside here on both sides. And our actual buttons are going to be on this side, the right side, when it's like laying flat. And this side will have the buttonholes. So for the side that has the buttons, we are simply doing a single crochet all the way down. So the way we're going to do this is that each double crochet row is going to have 2 loose single crochets. So we chain one, and this we're not going into actual stitches. So really you're just going to go around these double crochets. So I literally just go around the outermost double crochet. So I'm just going to go right around that double crochet, pull up a loop. So I have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both of those. That's a single crochet, and that's our first one. And then I'll do that again for that row because we're doing 2 per row. So that's my second one. And then I'll move to the next row, do one somewhere in there. That's one. And that's my second for that row. Go to the next row, do one, and then 2. That's my second for the row. And you're just going to keep doing this all the way down, just making sure you're only doing 2 single crochets per double crochet row because we're going into the side of those rows. So you're just going to do this all the way until the top here, and then I'll show you what we do then. I'm on the final row, so I'll just make 2 single crochets somewhere in there like that all the way until the end, and then you're going to chain one and go the opposite way. And we're going to do the same thing, except this time we're just working 1 single crochet into every other single crochet that we just did. So just go into every single crochet from the row we just made. You don't have to go into the side of any rows, so it'll be much easier. So just do 1 in every single stitch all the way down. So this is our second row of single crochets. And I'm to the end now, so I'm going to go into that final single crochet there. And then I'm going to chain 1, and this time I am going to cut my yarn. So just cut your yarn after chaining 1, and then pull it through like that, tighten down. And then we're going to attach our yarn to this side and do the same thing, except we are going to be adding buttonholes. So now is the time to figure out where you want your buttonholes to be. So you're just going to grab your buttons. The buttons themselves are not actually going on this side. This is just to kind of like mark where they are. Like I said, the buttons are actually attached here, but we're making our buttonholes now, so we need to know where the buttons are going to be, obviously. So grab your buttons, and this is going to depend on how many buttons you have. So I have 5, but overall you just want to evenly scatter them about, with the topmost one pretty much at the very top there, and then the bottommost one like a little bit above the bottom. This is based on just other cardigans that I have, so you can really do this however you'd like. It's just important that your buttonholes over here match up to where you eventually sew on your buttons on this side. So since I have 5 buttons, I'm going to start by putting 1 button in the very center. So if I just kind of like fold this together, I have my center here. So this is where my first one's gonna be. And I'm just gonna mark the center of where that button will be with my stitch marker here. So I am kind of eyeballing it. You can totally like count it all out, measure it, make sure that it's perfect if you want to do that. But personally, this is perfect for me. So that is my center button. And then I know I want a button up here at the very top. So I'll go ahead and mark that as well, like right there. And then I also want one at the bottom here. So maybe like right there. And then I have 2 more buttons, so I'm just gonna put those in the midpoints between the buttons that I already have placed. So like this middle button and this bottom button, I'll put one right there. And then same thing for the top, just put it roughly in the center. So again, if you want to measure all that out, be my guest. I will not be doing that. Now that we have them all marked off, we are going to attach our yarn. So find the very bottom corner here, and then you'll go into the very bottom right there, insert your hook into that very bottom corner, and then just grab your yarn, put it on your hook, pull through, and then I'm gonna chain 1 and then work a single crochet into that very stitch that we just went into, which isn't actually a stitch again because we're working into the side of stitches, but just wherever we just went in that very bottom corner, you're gonna place your first single crochet. And then we are gonna start making our buttonholes now. So this is also gonna depend on how big your buttons are. So what we're doing now is this stitch marker is marking the center of where our button will be. And so we need to chain enough at some point to have a little hole right there that the button can go into. So I'm gonna do 1 more single crochet right there in that same row that I'm on right now. And then I'm gonna start making a little chain gap. And so this is gonna depend on how large your button is. This is how big mine is, if that's at all helpful for gauge, but really you just kind of have to trial and error it. I did my 2 single crochets, and now I'm gonna make a little chain bridge and skip some stitches to make a little hole here that the button will go into. So this chain's gonna depend on your button size, but I'm gonna do 2 chains. So chain 2, and then you know how each row is worth 2 stitches? We're gonna be skipping however many stitches we chained. So I chained 2 and we're gonna be skipping 2 stitches. So that's gonna be skipping the first stitch of this row and then skipping the second stitch of that row. So I'm gonna go into the next one. I'm skipping these 2 and I'm gonna go into the next stitch with a single crochet like that. So as you can see, we have this little hole there. I'm gonna remove this stitch marker because we don't need it anymore. And now you can test putting your button in there and seeing if it'll go in there kind of snugly, which mine does. So play around with the number of chains that you do. You just want to make sure that you are largely centering the hole on where you place the safety pin, because that's where the button is going to be going into, is the center of that hole. And then just make sure that you're skipping the appropriate number of stitches. So let's say that you did a chain of 3, you would skip this one, just like I did, but you'd also skip this one and you go into the bottom of this same row that I'm in right now because you skipped 1 extra stitch than me. Hopefully that makes sense. But now we are gonna just do single crochets all the way down until we get to this next stitch marker to put our second button in. So sticking with the 2 single crochets per double crochet row, I just did my first of this row. So I'm gonna do my second right here and then just do that all the way down. So I'm in the next row, that's 2, and so on. So I'm near this next stitch marker and I'm gonna do the same thing where I chain 2 now to kind of go over the center of where that stitch marker is. And then I'm gonna skip 2 stitches, which again is gonna be the first one of this row and the second one. So I'll go into this next row, the first one of the next row, with a single crochet. And then I have this little gap here for my button. And then do the same thing all the way down where I'm going to do that same number of stitches that I'm skipping, which for me is 2, but do, whatever you need for your buttonholes. And I'm going to do that for all of these until I get to the very end. And for the very top, since I want the button so close to the top, I'm not going to exactly mirror what I did for the bottom. So this is my second row from the very top, and I did my first stitch of the second row. So I'm going to do my buttonhole here. So chain 2. And then I'm going to be skipping the second stitch of this row and the first stitch of the next row, and then going into this final stitch here. So go to the very top of that stitch and then make a single crochet. And now we're going to chain 1 and turn. And now we're just going to be going into every single stitch. So go into that first stitch, and then when you get to a buttonhole, just go into the stitch itself, like over these chains, if that makes sense. So these are 2 chains, so we're going to be doing 2 single crochets worth. So there's 1, and then 2. And then the next stitch is just this single crochet right there. So just 1 single crochet into every single crochet, and then when you get to a buttonhole, just go over those chains with however many stitches you did chains. Okay, I just did my last single crochet, and I'm gonna chain 1 and cut my yarn. Now we just need to attach our buttons on this right side being the right side when we're looking down at it right now. So the way I'm gonna do it, again, is not like super technical, but I just match up the 2 sides and then just mark on this right side the center point of the left side's buttonhole, if that makes sense. So I have this buttonhole, and I'm just going to line that up with the bottom here and then put a stitch marker in where that is going to go. If it helps, you can also just count stitches. So like, I know that this hole is X number of stitches away from this bottom one, so I can just use that to kind of guide it from there. That's also an option. Once they're all marked off, it's time to actually sew the buttons on. So if you have a certain way that you like to sew a button on, then feel free to just do that. I'm just gonna take the yarn that I made the sweater with and cut off a decent little piece, like this long roughly. And then you'll just grab your darning needle. You just wanna make sure it's a size where the eye of the needle can pass through your button. And then I'm just gonna thread the yarn through the needle, leave a little tail like that. And then from the inside, wherever we marked on this right side where we want to put our button, which will be on the first row of single crochets and then lined up wherever we lined it up with the other side, you're going to insert from the bottom, and then I'll remove my stitch marker and then take your button, put that on the needle, and then you'll pull up until you have a tail about that long peeking out on the other side. And now just orient your button however you want it to stay, and then go into that other hole once you're happy with where it is from the top, and then out through the bottom, and then just pull that through. And then you can go from the bottom again and go up into that first hole again, and then 1 or 2 more times into this next one. So just kind of securing it that way. But you don't want it so tight where there's no, wiggle where you can't actually move the button around and put it into the buttonhole. And then once that's secure, I will just on the back tie these 2 strands together, and then I'll weave in those ends at the very end. So just tie a knot, and then I'll do 1 more to secure it. And that is our first button. So I am gonna go off camera and attach all of my buttons, and then I'm going to weave in my ends. And then as my final step, I'm gonna steam block it, because I think that just gives it such a better look and a better drape instead of being so like dense and kind of stiff. And it's also gonna help stretch it out a little bit so my sleeves will be longer. So I'm gonna do that, and then it will be officially done. All right, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, comment any questions, comments, concerns that you have, and I will be happy to help. And if you do make anything, please be sure to tag me on Instagram or TikTok or whatever social. It's all down below. And lastly, if this was helpful for you, please be sure to subscribe. It's free and it really helps me out. And I'm kind of close to 100K. Kind of, which is crazy. So please subscribe if you haven't already. It would mean a lot. And just thank you so much for being here and for watching all the way to the end. I will see you in my next video. If you have any other requests, video ideas, tutorial requests, definitely leave that below or DM me as well. I'm always coming up with new ideas. But with that, I will see you in my next video. Bye.